are the major features of beat poetry with special reference to Allen Ginsberg. Now, going back to history, in the 1940s and 50s, there was a new generation of poets. They rebelled against the conventional mainstream American life and writing. And these people came to be known as the beat poets. And when you hear the name beat, there are different connotations. First of all, it is a name that gives out the idea of a sense of weariness, and also the beat associated with music. These people were very closely affiliated with music also, especially jazz music. So, the first connotation is a sense of weariness, a down and outness, and the sense of beat or rhythm associated with music, and also beatific spirituality. There's a kind of blissfulness you attain when you're uh, in a spiritual state. That kind of blissfulness, and also these people, they resorted to drugs. And also when you resort to drugs, you tend to be on a high, or you tend to be in a beatific state, a sense of utter blissfulness. So these are the different connotations of why the of the with the term that is called beat, and why these poets were called beat poets. They were also called hippie culture. Movement was also called hippie culture. So at first they were organized in New York City, then Los Angeles, and then San Francisco. And but by the 1950s, these poets at the heart of the movement, they settled down in the Bay Area, especially in the neighborhood near the beat poet and publisher Lawrence Ferlinghetti, where his bookstore City Lights was actually situated. And the other popular names that you normally associate with the beat movement are, we already spoke about Allen Ginsberg, who's how you're going to study. Then you also have Gary Cinder, Lawrence Ferlinghetti, and Gregory also. And what these people were generally, they were rebellious. They had this tendency to be politically dissident, to protest. And why is it so? You know that when there's a lot of repression, it is less like some kind of a spring reaction. The more you repress, the more there will be rebellion. So this kind of beat poetry, it emerged from a sense of disillusionment that followed after the World War II. And the World War II is synonymous with a number of atrocities like the Holocaust, the extermination of the Jews, and also the use of nuclear weapons against Japan. uh, 1 second, let me admit some. So, as I've already told you, it was actually a protest against these kind of atrocities, especially the Holocaust, and also the use of nuclear weapons against Japan. The victims of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they suffer till date. The victims have a special name called Hibakusha, where they are born without eyesight. And this kind of atrocity is has hounded the American population till date. And following the end of the war, the United States and the Soviet Union, they entered into a Cold War. And this period of geopolitical hostility also created a kind of a sense of paranoia and cultural and political repression at home. And because of this, I already told you they had a tendency to be rebellious, to protest, to be politically dissident. And so what happens? They have a tendency to break boundaries. And this tendency to break boundaries is seen in their poetic style, that is free verse. It consists of line, what is free verse? It consists of line not adhering to rhyme and meter. So, the lines, tend to have a run-on effect, and it may or may not include internal rhymes. So, this idea to break boundaries, you find it even in their use of free verse. For example, Allen Ginsberg poem Kaddish, it comprises long run-on sentences. Run-on sentences means For example, in Robert Frost's Mending Wall, there also Frost, he says that I do not need a wall. He's against boundaries, and therefore one line runs on to the next without necessitating any kind of full stop or commas. You see, this technique is also called enjambment. So this kind of long run-on sentences you see with the beat writers also, and the they have different lengths, and you can find that there is no rhyme scheme. And you see another example in Gregory Corso's Bomb that also dismisses rhymes altogether. The second feature is their style is essentially postmodern. While doing theory, I told you about the basic differences between modernism and postmodernism. Modernist writers, for example, why D.H. Lawrence's novels became very controversial. They gave their readers their first taste of real human scandal in terms of sex, alienation, revolution, class struggles, racial tension, and more. But what happens when you come on to postmodernism is that these people actually live these scandals. They are actually living them. You see the blatant kind of breaking of rules in terms of sexual exploits, resorting to drugs. So as a result of that, this kind of it is not only living these kind of values also. It is their work is unpassionately and without any kind of sense of they do it in a kind of open manner. It is eccentric and highly experimental. One example that is given here is William Burroughs' Naked Lunch, a novel of the Beat movement, and it uses the postmodern technique of cut up, and cut up is nothing but a fancy word for collage. All of you might have taken part in the collage competitions in the college university festivals, and what you do in collage, you make use of a number of uh, pieces and put it together and try to create some kind of theme out of it. So similarly, in William Burroughs' Naked Lunch also, uh, he, what Burroughs does is he took many sentences from different works. Just imagine, normally we take newspaper pieces and patch it up together, but in this case, he took different pieces, sentences, and he put them together. And this is what is called cut up. It is another what do you call uh, signature style of the beat poets, influenced by postmodernism. And again, I already, if you remember, I also told you that postmodernism also dismantles these boundaries between highbrow, high art, and low art. If you remember, that is what you call highbrow and lowbrow art. But the thing is, while the beat movement has been influenced by postmodernism, beat literature not only breaks down the barriers between highbrow and lowbrow, it is no bro. It, the correct definition with reference to beat movement would be that it is no bro. That means beat authors, they wrote about anything and everything. The third feature is that they were transgressive. Transgressive means their, what I've already told you, their tendency to break boundaries. So what happens as a result of that? It was their literature was said to be dirty. It was down low, obscene, vulgar, shocking, illegal, or sometimes, as I already told you, it was just eccentric or plainly strange. People found them to be hugely experimental or strange. They could not find something like this. And these people, why did they do this? They actually wanted a real revolution, and this was their way of doing it. So, Allen Ginsberg Howl also, you can feel that because of this tendency to be eccentric, this tendency to be experimental, it is a complex epic piece of poetry. And therefore, you find that it discusses a lot of transgressive, topics, or a lot of taboo things like gay, sex, drugs, poverty, and poverty. Why? Because in super tight 1950s America, these things were not supposed to be talked about. But Ginsburg thought that it was stupid, that we had to stay silent on things that were actually a part of life and actually reflected realism. So, Naked Lunch, William Burroughs' Naked Lunch is actually, it is like a long laundry list of transgressions. What are these list of transgressions? Where, characters in Naked Lunch, they do drugs, they kill cops, they organize orgies, commit so many other crimes, and they write from different time periods and hallucinations. In their tendency to write, from different time periods, that also breaks boundaries. How? Because they also, you're breaking the concept of time or temporality. You're breaking the concept of time or temporality. So, published in 1959, this novel, The Naked Lunch, it was quickly banned in the US. And when it finally, it got an American debut, it was slapped with an obscenity lawsuit. So even Howl, when Howl was originally published, it was the center of an obscenity trial because it dealt with a homosexual relationship, it dealt with heterosexual relationships at a time when sodomy laws were very strong. But eventually, Allen Ginsberg was let off because the judge said that if literature of this kind was curbed, that would actually be like a curb on freedom of expression. So, like how before it, Naked Lunch also actually challenged what it is, the very idea of what is obscene and the very idea of definition of literature. Now, the fourth feature is alienation. I told you these people, this beat movements, they belong to a politically repressive society, and so naturally they feel that they will not belong, and so therefore they were alienated. And if you, when we begin Howl also, the poem begins with the people talking about a sense of poverty and wearing tattered or torn dresses. But what is significant that these beats were white guys from a privileged background. These they were not poor by default, but they were actually white guys from privileged background. But why did they not then they voluntarily embrace poverty, in the sense that most of them probably had government jobs, and government jobs were, since these people were individualistic, they did not want to conform to government principles, and therefore they decided to drop out of these jobs. And their kind of poverty was one that they voluntarily embraced because they did not want to go to these kind of job positions. So they, and it was their kind of rest for them. Some of them it was that, and for some of them, they voluntarily alienated themselves, as I told you in the beginning, from mainstream American society. So on these solo adventures or adventure trips, they sought, some kind of personal escapism or release. And how did they find this kind of escapism? It was either by doing drugs, or by sex, or by indifference to social causes, or they just chose to opt out of American society. One example that was given was Philip Whelan. His work, like I say, is a poetry collection. It helps you to laugh your way out of loneliness. That is a kind of escapism. You laugh your way out of loneliness. If you remember Dr. Arun's class, somebody had asked him uh, they were experiencing, I don't honestly don't remember who it was, experiencing a strong sense of loneliness. So some people, they're actually happy being alone, and that's why the doctor asked, are you suffering your freedom? Because some people see it as a space for privacy, as something, a space for their individualism. So similarly, these poets also were very individualistic. So while Philip Fallon says that we could laugh our way through intense loneliness, Ginsberg howled in his howl about feeling out of place. So you find that they experience the same kind of rebellion, uh, the sense they wanted to escape from this authoritarian society, mainstream society, but they found different solutions to their predicament. The fifth feature is that they were influenced by Buddhism. Gary Sinder and Philip Whallam, they formed the Buddha White Tribe. And Jack Kerouac's The Dharma Bums, it introduces the Buddhist concept of the big mind. B and M should be capitalized there, I'm sorry. And this idea of big mind. So, when you can probably equate this with the Jivatma and Paramatma. When you look at the next line, in order to become part of this universal force, one needed to give up the luxuries. You know, the idea of Buddhism, where you give up all worldly luxuries, and you try to become the way the you try to find solace in spirituality. So what I found was I wonder whether this idea of the big mind is it is analogous to the idea of this paramatma. And then you have the sixth feature, that is anarchy. And for some, anarchy meant freedom. That, especially for the beat poets, this is how they thought they expressed their individuality. Anarchy means breaking the rules and regulations. Okay, using free verse is okay, because when you use free verse, it does not hurt anybody. But it can become dangerous when a person shoots his wife in the face and then runs away without taking any responsibility for his action. And this person was William Burroughs. And B- Burroughs believed that anarchy was the only way to go. I told you that different people found different solutions to their predicament. William Burroughs found his in anarchy, and this is the way he expressed it. And these people, by doing all these kind of uh, you know dangerous things, they felt they were creating a scene and creating an individualistic space for themselves. The seventh feature of the beat movement was sexuality. And sexuality you can find in various forms. We already spoke about orgies, it is polyamory, uh, bisexuality, homosexuality, lesbianism, gayness, queerness, threesomes, foursomes, moresomes, and they practiced a kind of experimental sexuality. For the beads, this was a kind of enlightenment, and they some of them equated sexual liberation with social liberation in society. And then you find Howl coming to the town. And I told you already in this poem, he had discussed heterosexuality and homosexuality in a kind of open manner. And it was the center of controversy, Howl, because sodomy laws were very strong during that time. And Ginsburg discusses this kind of sex very openly for two reasons. The first reason was he wanted to talk in a kind of, while talking about sexual exploitation, he wanted to also talk in a symbolic way about the damaging exploitation of capitalism. That is one reason. And second, it was a kind of autobiographical outlet. He was providing a kind of window into his own sexual life. So we talk about people coming out of the closet when they talk about their sexual life, but people said Ginsburg not only came out of the closet, he also destroyed it or obliterated it. And then in the Dhamma bums also, Kerouac, makes uses of scenes of sexual experimentation like orgies and sex with young girls to, confront society's attempts to control people's behavior. So he felt that, this was a kind of rebelling against society's attempts to control people's behavior. He felt that the Kerouac actually believed that having sex that is not sanctioned by the society actually helps to free the mind. So this is why some of them resorted to this kind of open sexuality. The eighth point is that the beat movement was interracial or cross cultural. After World War II and the Korean War, the Americans were pretty biased against the people in East Asia. And I told you the beat poets were against the American government, I mean, American mainstream society, and they hated this kind of prejudice. And this is why they idealized Buddhism or Eastern Buddhist thought not only because they liked it, but they found it also that it was a kind of weapon against this powerful white people because they hated Eastern people. And you can find that in On the Road also, Kerouac idolizes minority communities because he believes that they minority communities possess a rich artistic tradition, and this artistic tradition is something we can all learn a lot from. And in particular, Kerouac, he idealizes black writers like Langston Hughes, and he tried to emulate the jazz poetry of the Harlem Renaissance. And the ninth feature of poetry was they had a close affiliation with jazz music. And just there also you can see the tendency to break boundaries. Just like jazz musicians broke the role of classical compositions, in line with what we already said, beat poets had this tendency to break boundaries. So just in line with that, jazz musicians also broke the rules of classical compositions. And the 10th feature is that their poetry is confessional. It is confessional. Confessional poetry, the main proponents, the main practitioners, sorry, like Sylvia Plath, Robert Lowell, Anne Sexton, W.D. Snodgrass. These writers wrote about their uh, sexual guilt, their deep uh, private emotions, clinical experiences, their experiments with truth, their sexual exploits, their uh, struggle with mental illness, depression, etc. So this kind of, and they write without any kind of inhibition. It is that kind of signature style that these writers do not hesitate to put in their deepest emotions or private clinical experiences or their exploit with drugs. All these confessional elements you find with beat movement. And obscenity, we discussed this already, whether it is we already polyamory, it is lesbianism, it is gay, it is bisexualism, it is threesome, foursome, orgies, or anything, or their exploits even with young girls that they argued was a way to free the mind. All this figure under obscenity. And the 12th feature, the beat poets, they sought to write in an authentic, unfettered style. Unfettered style എന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ automatic writing, Normally, how do we write? We write, then we go back to the writing. No, we don't let thoughts come directly. We wait for the thoughts to come on paper, organize itself a bit, and then we go back and edit it. And these people wrote on instinct without, any sense of organization, any sense of proper organization. The writing was automatic. It was, and because it was automatic, it was authentic, and it was a kind of open first thought, best thought. That was the crux of that style. Was how central beat poet Allen Ginsberg described their method of spontaneous writing. This is something that comes from surrealism, also kind of automatic writing from instinct. And because they wrote from instinct, it was also highly, what do you say? It is highly individualistic, because when each person writes from instinct without an afterthought, naturally it will be a very individualistic and open kind of writing. 13th feature is that they were politically experimental and politically dissident. Poetically experimental and politically dissident. Poetically experimental, I already told you in what way they used free verse. They broke boundaries with their style. They resorted to illogical they were influenced by surrealism, and because of surrealism, you can find that is the 14th feature actually that I've not listed here. Because they were influenced by surrealism, you find their style to be highly experimental. You can find this tendency of automatic writing, illogical juxtapositions, personal iconography, uh, strange collocation of words, uh, dynamic long lines, uh, lines having a run-on effect. All this falls under their poetically experimental style. And also various kind of images are juxtaposed that do not have any kind of uh, logical connection, are juxtaposed with each other. And it was also politically dissident in the sense that I already told you. These people were disillusioned because of the Vietnam War, because of the World War II, because of the Cold War, and because of this they were politically uh, rebellious. They had a tendency to not go to or conform to political policies. Okay, these are the features of the beat poetry. I hope that was clear to all of you. Yes or no? Okay. So these are the features of beat poetry, and we'll begin with howl tomorrow. Okay. So all of you, please attend the classes properly. Okay. So we'll meet you tomorrow. Okay. You can please type in your name and leave the class. Type in your name in the chat box and please leave the class.